The research ship Serenity's Hope drifted through the cold darkness of space like a broken toy. Its engines were dead. The lights flickered on and off. Inside the ship, Dr. Vexhai pressed her thin fingers against the communication panel with shaking hands. Vexhai was a Zephyrian. Her people were tall and graceful, with skin so clear you could almost see through it. Their bones were hollow like birds, making them light and fragile. They had spent thousands of years studying plants from different worlds. They never hurt anyone. They never fought wars. They believed all life was precious. "Please," Vexhai whispered into the communication device. "Anyone who can hear this message. We are the research vessel Serenity's Hope. Our position is Sector 7 Alpha 9. We are under attack. Our engines are destroyed. We need help." Behind her, she could hear the terrible sounds of metal being torn apart. The Korthaks were cutting through the ship's hull with their plasma tools. Soon they would be inside. The Korthaks were everything the Zephyrians were not. They looked like giant insects with thick black shells covering their bodies. They had forearms, each ending in sharp claws. Their faces had large compound eyes and clicking mandibles that could bite through metal. They were pirates who traveled from system to system, taking what they wanted. But the worst thing about the Korthaks was what they did to other species. They did not just steal cargo or ships. They took people. They sold intelligent beings as slaves to the highest bidder. The galaxy was full of stories about Korthak raids. Whole colonies had disappeared. Families were torn apart, and no one seemed able to stop them. The established governments of the galaxy were weak. The Confederation of Peaceful Worlds had diplomatic talks and trade agreements, but they had no real military. When pirates attacked, the best they could do was send strongly worded messages. Most species had evolved on safe worlds where the biggest danger might be a small animal or a storm. They had never learned to fight. Dr. Vexhai knew her crew would be sold as slaves if anyone even wanted them. Zephyrians were so delicate that most buyers would probably just kill them for sport. She closed her eyes and sent the message again. "This is research vessel Serenity's Hope. We are under attack by Korthak raiders. Our coordinates are Sector 7 Alpha 9. If anyone receives this message, please help us. We have 12 crew members aboard. We are scientists. We mean no harm to anyone." The ship shook as the Korthaks broke through another section of hull. Vexhai could hear her colleagues crying in the next room. Dr. Zintai, who had spent his whole life studying rare flowers, was probably hiding under his desk. Engineer Molvek was likely trying to restart the engines even though she knew it was hopeless. Vexhai had heard stories about other ships that sent distress calls. Sometimes a patrol ship would find the wreckage weeks later. The crews were always gone. The Confederation would hold a memorial service and promise to do better next time, but nothing ever changed. She wondered if anyone was even listening to her message. The communication array was badly damaged. Maybe her signal was not reaching beyond this solar system. Maybe she was just talking to empty space. The cutting sounds were getting closer. Through the ship's internal cameras, she could see Korthak warriors moving through the corridors. They were huge, almost 3 meters tall. Their shells gleamed under the emergency lights. Some carried energy weapons. Others preferred their natural claws. Warlord Thakmor led them. He was larger than the others, with scars covering his shell from many battles. On his back, he wore the skulls of different alien species he had killed. Each skull told a story of another world that had failed to fight back. "Little plant lovers," Thakmor clicked in his harsh language. "Come out and make this easy. You will bring good prices at the markets of Zerion Prime. Well, most of you will. Some might break during transport." The other Korthaks laughed. It sounded like rocks grinding together. Vexhai sent her message one more time, adding details about their research and their peaceful mission. She included data about Korthak ship positions and their likely destination. If anyone found this message later, maybe they could track down what happened to them. What she did not know was that her signal was traveling much farther than she imagined. It bounced off relay stations and communication satellites. It passed through regions of space where no Zephyrian had ever been. It reached systems that the Confederation did not even know existed. In one particular system, third planet from a yellow star, listening stations picked up the transmission. The beings who lived on this world had been monitoring space communications for decades. They had been learning alien languages and studying galactic politics from a distance. They had been waiting. The third planet was called Earth by its inhabitants. It was what galactic scientists would classify as a Class 12 death world. This meant it was extremely dangerous. The gravity was high. The weather was violent. The surface was covered with predators that could kill in thousands of different ways. Most galactic species believed that intelligent life could not evolve on such a world. They were wrong. The beings who had evolved on Earth called themselves humans. They were bipedal mammals with forward-facing eyes and hands designed for gripping tools. They had survived millions of years on their deadly world by becoming the ultimate predators. They could run for hours without stopping. They could throw objects with deadly accuracy. They could coordinate attacks with silent communication. But the most important thing about humans was not their physical abilities. It was their minds. They had something that most galactic species had lost over thousands of years of safe evolution. They had the instinct to protect the innocent. When Dr. Vex High's message reached Earth, it triggered something deep in the human psyche. Somewhere in space, peaceful scientists were being attacked by slavers. Children of other worlds were crying for help. This was something humans could not ignore. Within hours, alarms were sounding in hidden bases throughout the Earth solar system. Ships that had been waiting in the darkness for decades began to power up their engines. Weapon systems that had never been tested in combat ran through their final checks. The humans were coming. And the galaxy would never be the same. Back on the Serenity's Hope, the Korthax finally broke through the door to the communication room. Vexhai looked up at Warlord Thakmor's terrible face and tried not to show her fear. Well, Thakmor clicked. The little scientist was calling for help. Did anyone answer, Plant Lover? Vexhai said nothing.
She did not know that her message had been received.
She did not know that even now, ships were moving through hyperspace toward her position. She did not know that the peaceful galaxy was about to meet its first Deathworlders. All she knew was that she had tried. She had sent a message into the darkness, hoping someone would care enough to help. In a few hours, she would learn that sometimes hope is answered by creatures you never expected. The Korthax dragged her away from the communication panel, not bothering to destroy it. They were confident that no help would come. After all, who in the galaxy would be strong enough to challenge them? They were about to find out. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Luna Base 7, staring at the translated message on her screen. For 30 years, humanity had been listening to signals from space. They had learned alien languages, studied their cultures, and watched their politics from a distance. But this was the first time they had received a direct plea for help. Run the translation again, she ordered Lieutenant Park, her communications officer. Yes, ma'am. The message is from a species called Zephyrians. They identify themselves as peaceful researchers. They're under attack by something called Korthax. From what we can gather from other intercepted communications, these Korthax are slave traders. Admiral Chen felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had read the intelligence reports about galactic civilization. Most alien species were physically weak and avoided conflict. They had created a society based on diplomacy and trade. It sounded wonderful until you realized what happened when truly evil beings decided to take advantage of that peace. How long ago was this message sent? She asked. 18 hours, ma'am. If they're still alive, they don't have much time, Sarah. Chen had grown up hearing stories from her grandfather about the old wars on Earth. He had fought in conflicts where good people died because no one with the power to help would act fast enough. She had sworn that if humanity ever gained the ability to help innocents, they would not hesitate. Contact Admiral Torres at Ceres Station. Tell him to activate the fleet. Full deployment. Ma'am, that's every ship we have. Are you sure? Lieutenant, somewhere in space, scientists who are studying flowers are being tortured by slavers. I'm very sure. Within minutes, signals were racing through the solar system. On the hidden bases around Mars, crews ran to their ships. In the asteroid belt, massive dreadnoughts that had been disguised as mining platforms revealed their true nature. Near Jupiter, carrier ships launched thousands of fighters that had never been seen by alien eyes. For decades, humanity had been preparing for this moment. They had built their fleet in secret, using technology that combined human engineering with scientific principles learned from intercepted alien transmissions. Every ship was designed for one purpose: to make sure that when humanity finally revealed itself to the galaxy, they would be taken seriously. Captain Marcus Rivera received his orders while drinking coffee in his quarters aboard the heavy cruiser Indomitable. He was a veteran of the last Earth conflicts, a man who understood both the cost of war and the price of inaction. His ship was one of humanity's finest, 800 meters of armor and weapons, crewed by 3,000 of Earth's best. All hands. This is the captain. he announced over the ship's communication system. "We have received a distress call from an alien vessel under attack by hostile forces. This is not a drill. We are going to war." The response from his crew was immediate. These were people who had trained their entire lives for this moment. They were the children and grandchildren of soldiers, police officers, firefighters, and emergency responders. They came from a world where running toward danger to help others was considered normal. In the hangar bays, pilots checked their fighters for the 100th time. These were not the sleek, beautiful craft that appeared in alien transmissions. Human fighters were built like flying tanks, designed to survive in combat against multiple enemies. They carried enough firepower to level city blocks. In the marine sections, soldiers loaded weapons that no alien species had ever imagined. Humans had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing other humans. Their weapons reflected lessons learned in countless wars on a world where everything was trying to eat you. But the most important preparation was happening in the medical bays. Human warships carried full hospitals, staffed by doctors and nurses who specialized in treating combat injuries. From the beginning, humanity's war doctrine included one absolute rule. You always tried to save everyone you could, even your enemies. Dr. Elizabeth Santos, the Indomitable's chief medical officer, briefed her staff on what they knew about alien biology. "We're dealing with species we've never treated before," she explained. "But the basic principles of trauma medicine should apply. Stop the bleeding, maintain the airway, treat for shock. We save lives first and worry about the politics later." As the fleet assembled, intelligence officers shared what they had learned about the Korthax from years of monitoring galactic communications. They were a warrior species that had turned to piracy after their homeworld was destroyed in a civil war. They were strong, ruthless, and experienced in fighting the weak civilizations of the galaxy. They're used to dealing with species that fold at the first sign of real violence, Commander Harris explained to the fleet's senior officers via secure transmission. Their tactics rely on intimidation and overwhelming force against opponents who don't know how to fight back. They've never faced anything like us. Admiral Chen watched the fleet status reports as hundreds of ships reported ready for departure. The sight filled her with both pride and sadness. Humanity had spent so much time and effort preparing for war, when they would have preferred to prepare for peace. But the galaxy apparently needed someone willing to fight for those who could not fight for themselves. "Admiral," Lieutenant Park called out, "we're receiving additional transmissions from the area. It sounds like the Korthax are broadcasting the execution of prisoners." Sarah Chen closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were hard as steel. "Signal the fleet. All ships maximum speed to the target coordinates. Rules of engagement are free fire on any vessel that does not immediately surrender. We are not going to arrive too late." The human fleet jumped to hyperspace in the largest military deployment in Earth's history. 300 ships carrying humanity's finest warriors, sailing through space toward a battle that would change the galaxy forever. On Earth, families gathered around communication screens to watch the news reports. Children asked their parents why the soldiers were going so far away to help people they had never met. The answers were simple. Because it was the right thing to do, because no one else could do it, and because humans did not abandon those who called for help. In space, Captain Rivera stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the stars streak by through hyperspace. He thought about the alien scientists who were probably dying while he traveled toward them. He thought about his own daughter safe on Earth, and what kind of galaxy he wanted her to grow up in. "Captain," his navigation officer reported, "we'll be dropping out of hyperspace in 6 hours. Good, signal all ships. When we arrive, we hit them fast and hard. No mercy for slavers, but anyone who surrenders will be treated according to the laws of war. We're going to show this galaxy what happens when you threaten innocent people in front of Deathworlders." Behind them, the rest of the human fleet followed through hyperspace. They were teachers and farmers and mechanics who had chosen to become warriors, so that others could remain teachers and farmers and mechanics. They were the children of Earth, and they were bringing their homeworld's justice to the stars. The galaxy was about to learn why apex predators made the most dangerous enemies and the most loyal friends. The age of peaceful weakness was ending. The time of the Guardians had begun. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a pack of wolves appearing in a field of sheep. 300 ships materialized in perfect formation around the Korthak mothership, their weapons already charging and targeting systems locked on. Captain Rivera stood on the bridge of the Indomitable. looking at the massive alien vessel that held the Zephyrian prisoners. The Korthak ship was impressive, nearly 2 kilometers long and bristling with crude but effective weapons. Around it, a dozen smaller raider ships formed a defensive circle. Communications. Open a channel to the lead Korthak vessel, Rivera ordered. Channel open, sir. Rivera's voice carried across space with the calm authority of someone who had seen too many battles. Korthak vessels, this is Captain Marcus Rivera of the Human Defense Fleet. You are holding prisoners from the research ship Serenity's Hope. Release them immediately and surrender your ships. This is your only warning. On the Korthak mothership, Warlord Thakmor looked at his sensor readings with confusion. Where had these new ships come from? His instruments showed 300 vessels of unknown design, but that was impossible. The Confederation had maybe 50 combat ships in their entire fleet, and they were all in the core systems. Unknown vessels. Thakmor clicked into his communicator. You are interfering with legitimate salvage operations. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Sir, Lieutenant Park whispered to Captain Rivera. They're broadcasting execution of prisoners on open channels. I think they're trying to intimidate us. Rivera's jaw tightened as he watched the display screen. A Korthak warrior was forcing a terrified Zephyrian scientist to her knees. The alien woman was crying, begging for her life in her musical language. All ships, Rivera announced on the fleet channel. Weapons free. Show them what happens when you threaten innocence in front of humans. The battle that followed was less a fight than a demonstration. The Korthaks had centuries of experience raiding weak civilizations. They knew how to intimidate farmers and merchants. They had never faced warriors from a death world. Human ships moved with a precision that defied everything the Korthaks knew about space combat. The Indomitable rolled gracefully to avoid enemy fire, while her main guns spoke with voices of thunder. Each shot was perfectly aimed, striking weak points in Korthak armor that their computers had identified in seconds. The human fighters were even more terrifying. They moved in coordinated formations that no civilized species would ever develop. These were tactics learned from wolves hunting in packs, from ancient human armies that had conquered continents through superior coordination. Korthak pilots found themselves facing enemies that seemed to read their minds. Every time they turned to engage one human fighter, 2 more would appear from unexpected angles. The humans fought like they had been born in the cockpits of their ships. On the mothership, Warlord Thakmor watched his escort vessels die one by one. The unknown attackers were using weapons technology he had never seen before. Their energy blasts cut through Korthak armor like it was paper. Their missiles struck with impossible accuracy. Who are these beings? He roared at his tactical officer. Unknown, Warlord. Their ships appear to be constructed from metals we don't recognize. Their tactics suggest a species with extensive combat experience. Combat experience? Against whom? The galaxy has been at peace for 300 years. What Thakmor did not understand was that the galaxy had been at peace because its dominant species were naturally peaceful. They had evolved on safe worlds where cooperation was more valuable than competition. Humans came from a world where everything wanted to kill them, and they had spent millions of years learning to kill everything else first. The human marines who boarded the Korthak raiders moved through the ships like death itself. They wore armor that could stop Korthak claws and energy weapons. They carried rifles that fired projectiles fast enough to punch through hull plating. Most importantly, they moved with the coordinated precision of hunters who had learned to work as a team or die. Commander Lisa Park led the boarding party onto the first raider ship. She was a small woman by human standards, but her armor made her look like a walking tank to the Korthaks. Behind her, her squad moved in perfect formation, covering each other's movements with an efficiency that spoke of countless hours of training. The Korthaks tried to fight back. They were individually stronger than humans with natural weapons that could tear through metal, but strength meant nothing against opponents who fought as a unit. Every time a Korthak warrior charged, human crossfire would cut him down before he could reach his target. Secure the prisoners, Commander Park ordered as her team reached the holding cells. Inside, they found a dozen beings from various species, all destined for the slave markets. The aliens looked at the human soldiers with fear and confusion. It's okay, Park said gently, switching to the universal translator that human intelligence had developed from years of monitoring. Galactic communications. We're here to help. You're safe now. The contrast was striking. These same humans who had just cut through Korthak warriors like a hot knife through butter were now kneeling beside injured prisoners, offering water and medical assistance. They spoke in soft voices and moved carefully to avoid frightening the rescued beings. Back in space, the last Korthak escort ship exploded under concentrated human fire. Only the mothership remained, and it was completely surrounded. Captain Rivera opened communications again. Warlord Thakmor, your escort fleet is destroyed. Surrender now and your crew will be treated according to the laws of war. Continue to resist and we will board your ship and take it by force. Thakmor looked around his bridge at the fear in his crew's compound eyes. These unknown attackers had destroyed 12 ships without losing a single vessel of their own. His warriors, who had terrorized the galaxy for decades, were terrified. Who are you? He clicked desperately. What species fights like this? We are humans, Rivera replied. We come from a world you would consider impossible. We have one rule. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. You chose to threaten innocence. That was a mistake. The Korthak warlord made his final error in judgment. Instead of surrendering, he ordered his crew to execute all remaining prisoners. He thought this would force the humans to negotiate. He had badly misjudged his opponents. All units, Rivera announced with ice in his voice. The enemy has chosen to murder prisoners. No quarter. Take that ship. The human assault on the Korthak mothership was swift and terrible. Boarding pods launched from every direction, their occupants ready for close combat. The Marines who poured into the ship moved with the deadly efficiency of creatures who had evolved from persistence hunters. The battle inside the ship lasted less than an hour. When it was over, the remaining Korthaks had surrendered. Warlord Thakmor was dead, and every surviving prisoner had been rescued. Dr. Elizabeth Santos and her medical team worked frantically to save the injured Zephyrians. The alien scientist had been beaten and tortured, but human medicine was remarkably effective on most carbon-based life forms. As Dr. Vexhai regained consciousness in the human medical bay, the first thing she saw was a face unlike any she had ever imagined. The human doctor had forward-facing eyes like a predator, but they were filled with compassion. When the doctor spoke, her voice was gentle despite coming from a being who could probably tear Vexhai apart with her bare hands. You're safe now, Dr. Santos said softly. My name is Elizabeth. I'm a doctor. We're going to take good care of you. Vexhai tried to speak, but her throat was damaged from screaming during the torture. The human doctor immediately understood and provided a tablet with pictures for communication. Your crew, Vexhai managed to type with shaking fingers. All alive, all safe. The beings who hurt you are either dead or in custody. They will never hurt anyone again. For the first time in days, Dr. Vexhai felt hope. These strange, terrifying, wonderful beings had traveled across space to save people they had never met. In a galaxy where the strong preyed on the weak, someone had finally arrived who was strong enough to protect the innocent. The age of the Korthaks was over. The time of the Guardians had begun. Dr. Vexhai had never seen anything like the human medical bay. The walls were covered with equipment she did not recognize, but the purpose was clear. These beings had dedicated enormous resources to healing the injured. Human medics moved between beds with calm efficiency, treating wounded Korthaks with the same care they showed the rescued prisoners. Captain Rivera entered the medical bay still wearing his combat armor. To Vexhai, he looked like a walking nightmare. 2 meters tall, covered in black metal that showed scorch marks from energy weapons, moving with the fluid grace of a natural predator. But when he spoke to Dr. Santos, his voice was gentle. How are they doing, Doctor? The Zephyrians will recover completely. Some of the other prisoners have more serious injuries, but nothing we can't handle. The Korthaks, she paused, looking at the enemy wounded. They're actually fascinating from a medical standpoint. Their exoskeletons protected them from most of our small arms fire, but their internal organs are surprisingly fragile. Rivera nodded and approached Vexhai's bed slowly, his hands visible and empty. Even through the translator device, she could hear that he was trying to speak softly. Dr. Vexhai, my name is Marcus Rivera. I command this ship. I want you to know that you're completely safe now. We've destroyed the Korthak fleet and rescued all your crew members. Vexhai stared at him in amazement. This creature, who looked like he could tear her apart without effort, was speaking to her like she was made of glass. She managed to activate her voice translator with shaking hands. Why? she whispered. Why did you save us? We are nothing to you. We cannot repay this debt. Rivera's expression softened in a way that no Korthak face ever could. Because it was the right thing to do. Where we come from, you don't need a reason to help innocent people. You just need the ability to help. Where do you come from? What species are you? We call ourselves humans. We come from a world called Earth. It's quite far from here. Dr. Santos joined the conversation, carrying a data tablet with information about human biology. Dr. Vexhai, we'd like to share some basic information about our species with the galactic community. Would you be willing to serve as a liaison? Vexhai looked at the data and gasped. The information described a world that should not be able to support intelligent life. High gravity, violent weather, deadly predators, toxic plants, extreme temperature variations. According to galactic science, evolution on such a world would produce only simple survival-focused organisms. This cannot be accurate, she said. No intelligent species could evolve on a Class 12 death world. That's what we thought too, Rivera replied with what she was learning was a human smile. Turns out the galaxy was wrong about a lot of things. While the humans cared for the rescued prisoners, their communication officers were busy establishing contact with the broader galaxy. Lieutenant Park had spent years studying galactic politics and languages. She knew exactly who to contact first. Captain, I've reached the Confederation Emergency Response Center on Altair Prime. They want to know who we are and what authority we have to operate in this sector. Rivera sighed. Dealing with bureaucrats was somehow more exhausting than fighting pirates. Put them through. The being who appeared on the main screen was a Centaurian, tall, blue-skinned, with large dark eyes that showed confusion and concern. Unknown vessels. This is Director Zolthera of the Confederation Emergency Response Center. You are operating in violation of Confederation space laws. Identify yourselves immediately. Director Zolthera. This is Captain Marcus Rivera of the Human Defense Fleet. We responded to a distress call from the research vessel Serenity's Hope. We have rescued the crew and eliminated the Korthak raiders, responsible for their capture. The Centaurian's eyes grew even larger. Human? I am not familiar with this species. What authority do you claim in this matter? The authority of basic decency. Scientists were being tortured by slavers. We stopped it. But you cannot simply enter Confederation space and engage in military action without proper authorization. There are procedures, diplomatic channels, formal requests for assistance. Rivera looked at the alien bureaucrat with barely controlled frustration. Director, while you were following procedures, innocent people were dying. We chose to save them instead of filing paperwork. Dr. Vexhai, listening to the conversation from her medical bed, spoke up weakly. Director Zolthera, the human saved our lives. The Confederation knew of our distress call. Where was your response? The silence that followed was telling. Finally, the Centaurian admitted, our nearest patrol ship was 14 hours away. By the time we could have mounted a rescue operation, we would have been dead or sold into slavery, Vexhai finished. These humans crossed the galaxy to help people they had never met. Perhaps the Confederation should be thanking them instead of questioning their authority. News of the rescue spread through galactic communication networks faster than anyone expected. For the first time in centuries, someone had actually defeated the Korthaks in open combat. Species that had lived in fear of raids suddenly had hope, but the details of how the victory was achieved were causing panic in government circles. The humans had destroyed a Korthak fleet without losing a single ship. Their tactics suggested military experience that should not exist in a peaceful galaxy. Most disturbing of all, they came from a death world that galactic science said could not support intelligent life. On the Confederation capital world of Altair Prime, emergency sessions were being called. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss this new development. The holographic displays showed images of human ships, human soldiers, and the devastating efficiency with which they had eliminated the Korthak threat. Ambassador Felnak of the Rigelian Collective spoke for many when he said, "These humans represent a fundamental shift in galactic power. They possess military capabilities that exceed our combined fleets. They operate from a world we cannot even visit due to its extreme conditions. How do we integrate such beings into our civilization?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Vexhai, still recovering from her injuries, agreed to address the Confederation Council by a holographic link from the human medical bay. "Honored representatives," she began. her voice still weak but gaining strength. I have spent 3 days among these humans. Yes, they are incredibly dangerous. Yes, they possess weapons and tactics that we cannot match. But I have also seen them cry over injured prisoners they had never met. I have watched them risk their lives to save beings from other species. I have seen them treat their enemies with more mercy than those enemies showed to us. She paused, looking directly at the camera. The question is not how we integrate them into our civilization. The question is whether we are worthy of being integrated into theirs. The council chamber fell silent. For centuries, galactic civilization had been built on the assumption that intelligence and compassion naturally went together, while violence and wisdom were mutually exclusive. The humans challenged every assumption they had ever made. Back on the Indomitable, Captain Rivera was dealing with a different kind of challenge. His ship's sensors were detecting dozens of incoming vessels, not hostile but definitely military. The Confederation was sending everything they had to investigate the situation. "Sir," Lieutenant Park reported, "we're being hailed by the Confederation flagship Harmony of Worlds. Admiral Tovran wants to speak with you directly." "Put him through." The being who appeared on screen was clearly very old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. Admiral Tovran was a Valdorian, with silver skin and 3 eyes that had seen centuries of galactic history. "Captain Rivera," the alien admiral said slowly, "I have reviewed the records of your engagement with the Korthak fleet. I must admit I have never seen anything like it. In 300 years of peace we had forgotten that such tactics were even possible. Admiral, we didn't come here to show off our military capabilities. We came to help people who were in trouble. Yes, I understand that. But surely you realize the implications of your actions. You have demonstrated that the Confederation's military doctrine is completely obsolete. You have revealed the existence of a major spacefaring civilization that we knew nothing about. You have upset the balance of power that has maintained peace for centuries." Rivera considered his words carefully. "Admiral, we've also stopped the Korthaks from raiding peaceful settlements. We've saved innocent lives. We've shown that slavers and pirates don't have to be tolerated just because no one wants to fight them. Maybe it's time for the galaxy to reconsider what peace really means." The old admiral was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he said, "Captain Rivera, would you be willing to accompany our fleet to Altair Prime? The Confederation Council wishes to meet with your people formally." "We'll come," Rivera agreed. "But Dr. Vexhai and her crew come with us. They've been through enough. They deserve to see their homeworld again." As the combined human and Confederation fleets prepared to depart for the capital, Dr. Vexhai looked out through the viewport of the human medical bay. In the distance, she could see her own damaged research ship being carefully towed by human engineers who were working to repair it. She thought about the message she had sent into the darkness just days ago. She had hoped someone would hear it. She had never imagined that the someone would 6 months after the rescue of the Serenity's Hope. The galaxy was a very different place. Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Confederation, looking out at hundreds of alien faces that showed mixtures of awe, fear, and hope. The great council chamber on Altair Prime had been built to inspire peace and cooperation. Its crystal walls reflected soft light, creating an atmosphere of calm deliberation. Today, however, the tension in the room was almost physical as the Galaxy's leaders tried to understand what humanity's arrival meant for their future. "Honored representatives," Admiral Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. 6 months ago, you had never heard of humanity. Today, you're debating whether we represent salvation or catastrophe. I'm here to tell you that we're neither. We're simply neighbors who believe that good people deserve to sleep safely at night." In the audience, Dr. Vexhai sat with the other survivors of the Korthak attack. She had spent the past months working as a cultural liaison between humans and the Confederation. The experience had changed her understanding of what intelligent life could become. The humans had established patrol routes throughout the former pirate-infested regions of space. Their ships moved in patterns that no military academy taught, following routes that seemed random until you realized they covered every possible hiding spot that raiders might use. Within weeks, attacks on civilian ships had dropped to nearly zero. Ambassador Felnak of the Rigelian Collective rose to address the human admiral. "Admiral Chen, while we appreciate the security your forces have provided, many of us are concerned about the implications. You have single-handedly made our entire military obsolete. Your ships outgun our entire combined fleet. How do we maintain sovereignty when any one of your vessels could conquer our homeworlds? Admiral Chen nodded, understanding the fear behind the question. Ambassador Felnak, let me share something about human nature. We spent thousands of years fighting each other on our homeworld. We learned that true strength isn't the ability to conquer others. It's the ability to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We didn't come to your galaxy to build an empire. We came because we heard someone crying for help. The Centaurian director Zolthara, who had questioned Captain Rivera's authority months earlier, spoke next. But surely you understand our concerns. Your technology, your tactics, your very presence changes everything. How do we integrate beings who can destroy us into a civilization built on consensus and cooperation? It was Dr. Vexhai who answered, rising slowly from her seat. The chamber fell silent as the frail Zephyrian scientist approached the speaking platform. Honored representatives, she began, her voice stronger than it had been since the rescue. I think we are asking the wrong questions. For centuries, we have built our civilization on the assumption that peace means the absence of violence. We believed that intelligent beings naturally chose cooperation over conflict. She paused, looking around the chamber at faces from dozens of worlds. But what we really built was a civilization where the weak had no protection from the strong. We chose to ignore evil because confronting it would require violence, and violence was beneath us. We let innocents suffer because helping them would disturb our peaceful ideals. The chamber was completely silent now. Dr. Vexhai continued, The humans have shown us something we had forgotten. True peace is not the absence of violence. True peace is the presence of justice. And sometimes justice requires good people to fight evil people. In the months since first contact, the galaxy had seen changes that went far beyond military security. Human medical technology was revolutionizing treatment for species that had never imagined such advanced care. Human agricultural techniques were ending famines on worlds that had struggled with food production for generations. But perhaps the most important change was psychological. For the first time in centuries, the weak could look to the stars without fear. The Korthax and other raider groups had either been eliminated or had fled to distant regions of space. Trade routes that had been abandoned due to piracy were reopening. Captain Rivera, now promoted to Admiral and Commander of the 3rd Human Defense Fleet, had become something of a legend among the civilian populations of the galaxy. His ships regularly received messages from colonies thanking them for their protection, from trading vessels that could now travel safely, from families who no longer feared that their children might be stolen by slavers. The human approach to peacekeeping was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They did not simply patrol trade routes and respond to attacks. They actively hunted down criminal organizations, disrupted slavery networks, and eliminated threats before they could harm innocents. Their methods sometimes made Confederation officials uncomfortable. Humans showed no interest in capturing pirates for trials that might last years. They offered surrender once, and if it was refused, they eliminated the threat permanently. It was efficient, effective, and completely contrary to established galactic justice principles, but it worked. The debate in the council chamber continued for hours, touching on everything from military integration to trade agreements to philosophical questions about the nature of civilization. Finally, Admiral Chen was asked the question that everyone had been thinking. Admiral, asked the elderly Valdorian Admiral Tovran, what does humanity want from this galaxy? What are your long-term intentions? Sarah Chen considered the question carefully. Behind her, the holographic display showed a map of known space. Red dots marked human patrol routes, green dots showed protected shipping lanes, and blue dots indicated systems where human medical and agricultural aid was being provided. Admiral Tovran, what we want is very simple. We want a galaxy where scientists like Dr. Vexhai can study flowers without fearing for their lives. We want trade routes where merchants can travel safely. We want worlds where children can grow up without worrying about slavers. We want the strong to protect the weak instead of preying on them. She gestured to the display. We're not interested in ruling your worlds or controlling your governments. We're interested in making sure that when someone sends a distress call into the darkness, help will come. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than many had expected. The Confederation formally recognized humanity as a member species and accepted human protection for civilian shipping. In exchange, humans agreed to respect existing territorial boundaries and to coordinate their military actions with Confederation authorities when possible. But the real change was happening far from the council chambers. On thousands of worlds, beings who had lived in fear for generations were sleeping peacefully for the first time in their lives. Children played in starports without their parents worrying about kidnapping. Merchants planned trade routes through regions that had been too dangerous to visit. Dr. Vexhai returned to her research, but now she traveled on ships protected by human escorts. Her latest project involved studying the remarkable plants that grew on humanity's deadly homeworld, species that had evolved to survive in conditions that would kill most galactic life forms. She often thought about the night she had sent her desperate message into space, hoping that someone would care enough to help. She had never imagined that the answer would come from creatures who combined the ferocity of apex predators with the compassion of guardians. The galaxy's age of peaceful weakness was over. The time of the guardians had truly begun. And for the first time in centuries, the innocent could look to the stars with hope instead of fear. In the deep reaches of space, human ships maintained their vigilant patrols. They moved through the darkness between worlds like protective spirits, watching over those who could not protect themselves. Their crews came from a world where everything wanted to kill them, but they had chosen to use their strength to give others the peace that they themselves had never known. The greatest predators in the galaxy had become its greatest protectors, and the universe was a safer place because of it. As Admiral Chen concluded her address to the Confederation Council, her final words echoed through the chamber and across the galaxy. We came from the darkness between stars when you called for help. We will remain in that darkness, watching and waiting, for as long as innocents need protection. This is the promise of Earth to the galaxy. You are not alone. The age of the Deathworld Guardians had begun, and it would be a long and peaceful age indeed. Old.